All right, it's the DFL Before DNF podcast. I'm super excited for today because we're going to talk about how the recording of the Zion 100 went. The Zion 100 miler broke me video that we have on YouTube. But before that, I've been pushing hard for trail running companies to have jingles. I think I've got the first ever trail running jingle. I'm going to play this for you real quick. It's just a few seconds. I think you're going to be pretty blown away by it. If I know how to do this. Okay, here it is. Borderland, somehow we're still not learning. Borderland,
is that 3-part harmony?
We still suck at running.
Still suck at running, yeah.
That's it. Challenge on. Challenge, Hoka, your turn. All right, so... this is my buddy Ben. Ben has been, if you've seen all of the high fidelity videos I've posted on YouTube, so not these podcasts that I do, they've all been done by my friend Ben. And we've been friends for knocking on the door of 20 years at this point. We played music together for most of those, but really in like the last 3 or 4 years, our professional friendship has been around video and videography and putting out stuff. He did some stuff for me when I did the coffee roasting company La Barba, but once Borderlands got going and I decided that and the way that social media was moving and all that was, you got to have a strong visual video strategy. Ben was of course my first call. So before we get any further, before we go into the story, welcome Ben. How are you and where are you?
You called me because I have this, right?
Dang.
That's what we shot it.
Is that a
shot everything you've seen on this? Yeah.
Man,
where am I? I'm in my studio here in Utah. And how am I? Dude, I'm pretty good. I had an epic Father's Day yesterday.
Nice.
So
solid, man. Yeah. You and you're wearing a shirt that looks like it's from the 80s, but it's just a picture. It's just a bunch of pictures of your wife.
It's just she got me this for Father's Day. I asked her for it like a year ago. I was like, this is a cool idea. It's like an Instagram ad, and I was like,
dude, that's funny.
I want that. I think that's sick. There's like my daughter on there and everything.
Yeah, for those just listening and not watching, it's just it feels like you went to the mall in the 90s and they're like, hey, can we make you a airbrushed shirt? And then,
it's fire,
but it's just like 7 photos of his wife and it says Nicole, which is her name.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben, first, are you a trail runner?
Oh gosh, no.
Ultra runner of any kind. Ultra anything. No. Are you ultra anything?
I'm not ultra a single thing. No.
Okay, so this is why this is fun. No. I knew the answer. I set you up. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
You've done a great job of shooting and telling stories within trail running. So I know that there's like a bigger picture here of storytelling in general. There's a thread to storytelling that transcends industry. But at the same time, I'm curious just your impressions of, compared to other stuff that you shoot, other things that we've, done together over the years. Like, what are your impressions of ultra trail running? Just you were out at Dead Horse watching the 50 miler, shooting the 50 miler, editing a 50 miler documentary. You're out at Zion shooting that. We've shot TJ Bottom going into, him talking about ultras, all those podcasts where we're just going into deep dives with guys like Michael Whiteside, or you went with me to Austin to shoot Matt Johnson. Like, you've been in the ultra world now, and I'm just curious, what are your impressions?
Yeah, well, first of all, when you first told me about ultra trail running, like in the very first conversations that we were having, probably 5 or 6 years ago, even, it's probably the same reaction you get with everybody. They're like, no way are people going 100 miles on their 2 feet. Like, that just sounds insane. Yeah. I think I did a 5K one time. Yeah, it was a 5K. It was on Halloween day.
50,
and my wife's
50K?
No, gosh. 5K.
Oh,
and I was pushing my kids, like pushing them in a stroller.
Okay.
And it almost killed me. And so that's the extent of running I have in the treadmill. But when I heard about trail running in the first place, I was just like, this is clearly for people who are broken in the head a little bit. And you, like, we've talked about that. Like, you got to be a little off to love the pain like that and love the suffering.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people are smiling at the start line. I'm like, you are about to get crushed, and you're stoked about this. But yeah,
Yep.
I mean, to capture the stories are built in. Like it's there's an incredible story after incredible story just built into to trail running and people running super long distances, ultra distances and stuff. So yeah, they tell themselves, and it's like, man, it's a pleasure to be able to like tag along and capture some of that stuff, you know. And watching I've been watching some of Drew Darby's work and stuff, like with Sally McRae and stuff like that, and they're all powerful. So it's just fun to do. But you asked about doing different work in relation to this work, and it is completely different. Like I have my camera rig back here that's like specifically built out to be able to just like go all day in my hands, not have to go back to a car or like a battery to like recharge and stuff like that, because it's so happening in the moment. And it's so easy to miss something, you know, or to be able to walk, you know. I think I walked out to you like a mile away or something like that one time, and it's like, dude, you got to have something so nimble and not super duper heavy to get out there and capture that kind of stuff. So it's totally different.
Like we want it to be like high quality, but you're also like, not only is the BMX aid station that you're referring to at Zion a very remote place in the country to be, then you're going to go a mile in from that. And so you also have to, I mean, from a race director perspective, we joke like Zion is a hard race to put on, because if you run out of food, you know, for an aid station, you have to go to St. George. So like you have to, it's a long ways away. Meaning you have to come with everything you need and then some. And I got to imagine then for you, it's that same deal. Like you've got to show up with everything. Cause like if we're at a critical moment in the storytelling and we're trying to capture something in real time, you got to have it all. Right. And then some.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that, I mean, I learned my lesson a few times, I think, with you. And part of that was, especially with the drone, like when you're out there, you know, the places are unbelievable. All these trail races are held in places. Even the Salt Lake 50K, the Foothills 50K that you put on is gorgeous. So it's like built in, beautiful landscape. So you want to have plenty of opportunity to capture that kind of stuff. So, you know, you're going out there with way more battery and way more card space and way more, you know, way more capacity than you think you're going to need, because at the 50K, not the Salt Lake Foothills 50K, but the Dead Horse or 50 miler, I totally maxed out all 128 gigs of my drone within like literally like within 16 hours. I was like, this is all gobbled up.
That's just of the drone, 128 gigs of just the drone.
Yeah. And some of you guys, like, you know, your whole computer is 128 gigs on some of these like MacBook Airs and stuff like that. Like you just one day kill all the space. So I've learned my lesson in that regard, to just like be way over prepared. And you saw like at the Zion, I had all my gear laid out on the table. Like it's just way too much gear, because eventually you never know. It's like, I'm gonna have to snag that and run out on the trail and find you with the GPS, which works.
I think this is a good point, moment to make this point. You know, I don't have the budget for you to bring out a crew. You know, I'm maybe I do some graphics for these documentaries, like the lower thirds names and stuff like that. Otherwise, this is you top to bottom. I think that's important to note. And we laughed about this the other day, I think, putting a positive spin. So I mean, not even negative spin. The reality is that at these ultras, there's a lot going on. And so it makes sense to have a handful of camera people out there shooting. Like you just want to make sure that you get everything, have all that footage. Now, we've talked with other, some of the other great filmmakers in this space, and they have multiple camera people. But the thing is that the people, their subject matter, and this is what I think makes Borderlands Subject more unique, not entirely unique, is that I'm shooting a documentary about me here at first, but ultimately we want to be doing this of other people and more people. I'm extremely slow, and I hang out at the aid stations for a very long time. So if you're shooting Sally McRae, she's in and out. She's competing. She's going,
Right.
she wants top 10, finish top 5. She wants to win. So you got to have a lot of cameras in there to get all the action, all the stuff. I was at BMX8 for 45 minutes. Yeah. And so
that's a lot of footage.
Yeah. So we had a lot of footage with one camera person. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying the positive spin is that I'm slow as hell. So you got time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, there's something to that.
But Ben is editing, shooting. He's, director of photography. He's the grip. I don't even know what a grip does. He's also like, I don't know. He's everything. And so I think that's important to note if you're looking to hire somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. There's advantages. I mean, the whole crew, like you were saying, there's huge advantages to having a crew. Like, one of the big advantages is having a sound design person, like somebody there who's just responsible for sound. That's a whole nother world. Is capturing great sound. And if you have a guy there who's just dedicated to thinking about that, then you just, it's just like anything else. Like you get to think about something in a more narrow scope and do a more excellent job at that one thing. So there are challenges to being the one-man crew. But I thought you were going to bring up how I was so confused when you were leaving one of the aid stations in Zion. It was like the 25-mile aid station. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, Virgin.
And I'm like, why? I mean, I was like, dude, you don't have to go slow for me. Like, go ahead and run. I'll run with you for a little bit. And you're like, oh no, this is the pace. Like this, I'm going fast. I'm going fast for you. Yeah. You told me you were actually running for me, and it was like a slow jog at best.
At best. So you can do this. I mean, that's the point. That's the moral of this conversation. You've been Robie. You could have done this race.
Yeah.
We put race in quotation marks.
No, I saw Alex. So, I saw the suffering.
When we look, seriously, Air Force, come on. If you think about the whole scope of shooting the Zion 100-miler, also Ben gave this the title. In the world of YouTube, like if you're a creator out there and you're trying to do it, like it's all about the content has to be great. So you have to check that box. There's no way around that. The second thing is that your thumbnail on YouTube and your title on YouTube have to be just as good as the entirety of the content on the other side. Otherwise people will never go to it. So Ben also came up with the title, the Zion 100-miler broke me. And that was, I mean, that's a YouTube optimized title, and that title might change later, but Ben also came up with that. So you think about the whole scope. Like Ben, I think at this point you've wrapped your mind around ultra trail running to be able to even think like YouTube titles and thumbnails and to help make it work. I think we're north of 32,000 views of this in 2 weeks, which is a massive win from my perspective as the one who dreamed this up.
Oh, I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of it. And, I have no shame telling my friends like, hey, go watch this. Not because of me, because of how great of a story it is. I just think and it's cool art. Like that's what it is to me. Like it's fun to watch cool art. And then I was going to say the learning curve to ultra trail running is steep. If you're a filmmaker, it was hard. Like, and we've had countless conversations about this. And I'm still learning like all the ins and outs, but I've watched some of the podcasts with guys talking about nutrition and eating. So I'm recognizing like, oh, this is a crucial part.
Yeah.
I want to capture this. I want to tell this part of the story, or like pacing or looking at your watch or like all that kind of stuff is now apparent where it wasn't before. Or like the shoes, like when we were doing the Speedland stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, the shoes are so important. Like, and you only running them for this many miles and then they're done, that kind of thing. Right. Like that's something I would never know. I have shoes that I'm wearing these shoes right now for 2.5 years. Like that, it just doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Right. Those shoes go fast. So all the gear and equipment and things you're thinking about during the race, if you don't know that as a filmmaker, you have to just like put your mind within the mind of the runner, so often, or you just can't follow along. Does that make sense?
Okay, and we're back from technical difficulties.
Sorry, guys.
All right. Okay. Ben Robie, and we're back. Okay, so you were talking about the shoes, the gear, just like the full range of stuff that we go through to make ultra happen. I think from my perspective, I think of like the full range of stuff it takes to make what you're doing happens. I mean, in trail running right now, there's a lot of, people are pushing out documentaries. I think it's interesting. People love them and want to, see them more. What has been your observation from, like, when I would send you references on other, like the icon of the industry, Billy Yang, you mentioned Drew Darby. There's like even like smaller brands or people, individuals just throwing videos out. What have been your impressions of it? And I mean, and you can go anywhere you want with that. What have been your impressions?
Yeah. Well, number one, first of all, it's some of the most fun filmmaking there is. Like, one of my favorite ones is the Tahoe 200, the Sally McRae that Drew Darby did.
Yeah.
And it's, first of all, I just love Tahoe. So it's just gorgeous landscape. You just can't look away. It's so pretty, and it's, it's gritty. There's so much like interesting footage. Like there's not a lot of times where you're out shooting at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. where things are really, really happening. So it's just cool.
Yeah.
Like that's a time where not a lot of people are holding cameras, you know what I mean? Which is probably appropriate.
But, probably the right call.
Yeah. It's just like, what is happening? There's people outside running during these times and like trying to stay conscious, and like, this is a mile 100 something, and they're grinding through that. So watching a bunch of other stuff in the industry, I've learned so much. I have so much respect for a lot of these guys doing these films.
Yeah.
And I will say it feels like it's just on the upward trajectory of catching kind of the public's eye, because it's such an interesting sport and fun thing to make films out of. Yeah. So the views on YouTube and stuff, they just don't justify the quality of work for a lot of these guys, even the small guys. It's like, man, this is hard to do. First of all, I can testify to how hard it is just to tell a good story in general. And then to do it with, all the elements involved, all the unknowns involved of being out there. So when I see a good one, like what stuff you've sent me, and even the stuff of, what's the France race? UTMB.
UTMB. Right? Yeah. Now you can even, I mean, you're so in this that you know the names of these iconic races.
I know. It's weird. But watching that stuff, it's just like so much respect. There's guys running after these pro trail runners with gimbals for a mile, miles on end. It's like, oh my gosh. And I think Drew does some of that too, but it's just like, that is insane. That's like no other type of filmmaking I can think of, besides maybe like Red Bull stuff and things like that. Yeah. But they have huge crews as well. Huge budgets, like, huge crews.
Right now I'm watching Unchained season 2, which is the story of Tour de France. So good. But when you look at all that footage of a crazy iconic endurance sport, they're in cars. They're shooting it in cars.
Oh yeah.
Like this one, you have to be on foot. I mean, because even you're limited on the drone, because like if you're in an alpine setting, there's no way you can get the drone. Some of that wide open desert running, gave you some headroom to shoot the drone. But by and large, man, there's people on foot chasing these people. So they're running the 7-minute miles with the gimbal, like just crazy.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's nuts. So like you've sent me a few that were done earlier on. Not even earlier on, like 7-8 years ago, which doesn't seem like a long time ago, but in the world of trail running, it's a long time ago. It's like that was the beginning.
Totally. It's evolved so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So those films, you can tell, like those are rudimentary type of films where they're like still figuring it all out and giving it a shot, just kind of winging it. And now it's just come so far there, and people are really slaying it, doing a good job.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, I mean, there was someone sent me a message yesterday of a book called Ultramarathon, and I was like, oh, this is cool. They're like, hey, you should read this book. You're contemplating doing a road ultra, which would, if we do that and we do a documentary on it, like, you'll be on the road. It'll be a little bit easier to access points. You're not hiking up through whatever. But the point is that the book was from 1980, and I was like, man, to write a book about ultra marathons in 1980, there weren't many to choose from. There was, you probably count on two hands how many there were to choose from.
It's like a disc golf book.
Yeah, totally. People are doing it, but does anyone care? And now that I think about like ultra running documentaries, so there were some, like I think there was like a early 2000s, maybe even late 90s, on a race called Badwater that goes to Death Valley in I think July. It's 135 miles. There were some, but I mean, then it wasn't until Unbreakable that I think people got really stoked on it, and that was
Oh yeah.
2010, 2011. And then it just, as it's evolving right now, it's yeah, you're right. So a documentary from 7 years ago, I mean, the quality has increased quite a bit since then. But the thing that doesn't, and this is where I'm going with this big picture, is that storytelling kind of transcends the technology even. So a great story.
Oh, totally.
So you can. So this is where I say when I compliment you, I think about this all the time with artists. It blows my mind when like a great artist. So like you think about all the technical stuff that you're doing as a videographer, like all the technicality, like you're the same way that I'm getting ready in the morning for these races. You're getting all your gear in order. You're going through all this. You're technically minded. You have to be technically on point.
Yeah.
Everything has to be work tech. You talk about sound design. You're doing the sound design. You talk about visual. Well, you're on for visual. You're your own director of photography. You're all these things. And then what you have to do with all that, think about like Picasso, early Picasso, he was painting realism. He was technically very, very good. And then he wanted to flip a switch and start to communicate something with that technical perfection. That to me is the most mind-blowing thing of creativity. And what I think that you're doing that's so impressive is that you're the technical guy, and then you go in and make the art with the technicality. It's the same thing with music. You can be a fantastic guitar player and then just be an awful communicator with your technical guitar skills.
Yeah.
Am I making sense here? Because this is this is to me that always blows my mind within creativity. Like you've got to be technically good, and then you have to know how to communicate through that brilliance. That's what's crazy. I think that's what you do a good job of.
Oh, thanks, man. No, the tools have to they have to complement, and they have to just give you it's like good paintbrushes or good knives for a chef. Like you have to have the right stuff ready to tell that story. And that's been also a huge learning curve. I mean, I'm almost 10 years into working with film stuff now. So there's all that stuff has to disappear, and then you can just focus on the beauty of the creating, like you were talking about. Like you have to just let that stuff all fade into the background. But I don't want to make it sound like I'm nailing it every time. Like there's so many mistakes that happen out there, and it's all about adapting. And I think adapting is part of the conversation, maybe more than any of it. Maybe more than any of it. Just like being on the trail, like what 100%. You have to do, adapting constantly. Like this is, I forgot this thing. I wish that never happened. It happens all the time. I'm like, oh gosh, I forgot this little tiny cable that I need for this moment.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna have to figure out how to.
And when you're doing editorial in the moment, so you're doing editorial. We don't have scripts on these things. We've joked about this before, but I think that's also one of the things that makes them so great. Like it'd be great if we had some sort of script. It would help you in editing, but we're just shooting, and then you're pulling and you're finding the story and you're bringing it to the forefront. In editorial, like if you miss a moment that you're trying to get because something is technically incorrect, I don't even know the words, but let's say something's off on your camera or you're standing in the wrong spot and the sun kills the shot or whatever. Like, so you've got to have all that technicality perfect so that you can capture the moment. Because if you don't, then you miss the moment. There's no getting that moment back in editorial.
Yep. It's just like a wedding.
Oh, good point.
Like it's one shot.
Good point.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes people could laugh about like, oh, shooting weddings, but like I've had one of those things. I've had a wedding. You can't miss, like, don't miss this point. I'm never getting this. Hopefully
it happens once. Yeah.
Only going to happen once in my life. Do not get this wrong. And I think that's a fantastic example. Like the pressure's on, like you can't miss these moments. You're not going to get him back. He's not going to kiss the bride for the first time again. That's a good, like, that's a really good one.
Hey, can you guys just run that back? Just let me do, I
would you
I wasn't
mind?
Recording. I didn't forgot to record
again.
Oh, that was good. Run that. I'm gonna get a different angle. There we go.
I didn't. Sorry, we have a live studio audience.
I wouldn't know. They're there, I guess. I was gonna say, I don't think there's been a time when I've with my eyes seen you run through, the starting line.
That's funny.
You know what I
looking
mean?
through a
Like I
screen.
was like, I hope he's there. I hope he's
Yeah,
running
right.
this, and just holding it. And you can really tell in the Zion one, like for those of you who've seen it, there's a little moment where I just kind of highlight Josh and you can see him kind of run through this. And you're looking at me. I am not looking at you. I have no idea
Yeah.
you're even going through. But I think every single time I'm like searching for you, can't find, it's dark. It's freaking 5 a.m. or whatever. I'm like, can't focus on my tiny screen, you know?
Yeah.
But that's like an example of like hope and pray that you're there somewhere where a crew
Yeah.
would be amazing. Going back to what we were talking about before,
Right.
just be like, hey, your job is Josh,
Yes.
only Josh.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
What
I don't
would
want to
your
make it sound like we nail everything.
what would
all
your
the time.
next hire be? Let's say all of a sudden budget increases and you've got to hire
Yeah.
like what's your immediate hire?
Yeah, definitely a second camera. That would probably be my next.
Okay.
My
And
next.
so you
crew.
would still be editing. So you would bring all that second camera content in and you'd be the one to go through it and
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. If we could have somebody on site and to take a little bit of shift, especially for the 100-milers, like when you have that long of a time and it goes
Yeah.
through the night, if I could trust somebody with a shift or something like that, that'd be a huge advantage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just to have the energy for the next section. And like in the Zion film, when we go over to Jeremy and we're kind of hanging out with Jeremy after his DNF, there's so many opportunities to just like, hey, why don't you stay with Jeremy or stay on Jeremy when I'm talking to Josh so we can see what Jeremy has to say, or watch his face or something like that. There's all those different tools to tell the story. So
yeah,
camera B
yeah,
would be
that
sick.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. I mean, the world is a better place with more, ultra running content, and a lot of people out there. Borderlands is uniquely positioned. We've got money to spend on this and in working with sponsors and all that sort of stuff. Not everybody does, but people want to tell the story and they want to maybe even tell it on their own. I've been so back and forth. Like I've almost hit buy on a few different pieces of gear. And the reason I keep not doing it is because it's like, hey, I've got a phone. And if I'm not doing it with my phone, what magically makes me think that if I get the DJI Osmo 3 creator, that now all of a sudden I'm going to be getting content? Does that make sense? So it's like, some people start to think, hey, if I just get the gear, it'll be better. But for anyone out there who is already like shooting it, they've got thoughts, but they're trying to shoot it themselves. Do you have any just like tips for higher quality content? And never mind storytelling in this moment, but just like, hey, let's assume that they've already got the vision for their content. They know what they're going to be creating. They're out on the trail running. I mean, how big of a concern are things like the dirt and, being in the sun all day? And, you know what I mean? Just kind of high level thoughts on like, how can we help trail runners who want to have better content, have better content?
Yeah. Well, first of all, story always wins. Like you cannot replace.
Yeah. You can have like an iPhone 6 with a great story and it will crush compared to an iPhone 15 with no story. So yes.
Exactly. So like the question, I mean, this was so funny. This question comes up all the time. And I don't think going back to the chef analogy, like it's not the sharp knives that make the food taste good. Like there's so much more going on. Right. So I would not go out and spend money on gear if I was somebody just trying to create content for Instagram or YouTube and stuff like that. Man, just focus on getting great stories. Like if you have something going on, like if you're about to do something for the first time, maybe a race for the first time, document the journey. Like tell us how you're feeling so that we can relate to you. Or be blown away by something that you're trying or whatever the story narrative might be. Show us you getting up at 5 a.m. so that you can still take your kids to school and get a run in the morning. Like that stuff is cool. That's interesting. And a phone is fine. A phone is totally fine for that. Like I showed you my little dinky camera, like this thing costs $350. That will do the job. It will totally do the job. So it's so not about the gear. However, sharp knives in the hands of a skilled chef make a huge difference. Like,
Yeah.
man, you're now you're cooking with grease, to continue the metaphor.
Yeah.
Now you're doing something that a lot of people can't do. So
Yeah.
if you're a great storyteller with great gear, and there's great content to be captured, man, you can do a ton with that. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
Yeah.
it's important to know
Well,
story is everything.
Yeah. I think one of the things that just creators in general, and we're kind of going down this rabbit hole, but this is where I'm living right now. I was just thinking about, how do you put out the right content? There's a few things, like I've just been obsessed with Gary Vaynerchuk. Anybody who's putting out content or cares about this whole world, I think he's by far the number one person in the world to listen to about it. One of the things is, like, if you're trying to refine your storytelling, put out a bunch of stuff. Like, you've got to be embarrassed. Let yourself be just entirely embarrassed. Let it suck. Let it be so bad. And don't worry if 6 people see it. Like, right now, the trend in creators on Instagram is to complain about the new algorithm. And it's like, you all go complain.
Yeah.
The more you go spend time complaining, the more room you're making for me to get more traction with my message. So you're out there complaining.
Yes.
Just throw crap out there all the time. If anyone makes fun of you, they're not worth it anyway. Just put it out there and find the story. If you saw early Borderlands stuff, it was very wordy. I'm a very wordy person. I was spending forever setting up a story, and I thought those stories were good, but I spent forever setting them up. And in the end, people never got to the story because I spent so much time setting it up. And then Gary Vaynerchuk comes along and says, if your first second isn't amazing with story, not visual, with story, if it isn't catch their attention in the first second, then no one cares. So, like, flips it everything on its head. So yeah, to your point, you got to have all that strategy. Now gear is only helpful if you're doing that. So that's why I always go back to, like, hey, I was going to buy something, but if I'm not doing it on my phone, what makes me think now I'm magically going to do it with this new $600 thing or $700 thing? I'm not. But yes, to your point, story. That's anybody who's doing well. Andrew Glaze, Matt Johnson, they've got hooks, they've got stories. And then what comes behind that is a great videographer or, someone of that sort to tell that story even better.
Yeah. And I mean, just to add on to that point, it's a different skill. Like, it's a totally different skill to be able to come up and craft great stories versus hold a camera and compose a beautiful shot. That's a different skill. So I've had to adapt and change and learn and practice and mess up and fail. Like you've talked about. I've had to try it. And then I get back to my computer. I'm like, that sucks. That looks so bad. Like, just genuinely, call it what it is, be honest with myself, and then get back out there and shoot it differently. And remember, oh man, when I'm getting back to my computer, this is going to look terrible, or this is going to look great. Here's how I'm going to fix it. So there's all those learnings that go into, man, just reps, just try it over and over again. So yeah, that's totally an encouragement, I would think, to folks who just are trying to get content out there. Just give it a shot, and then be embarrassed. And that's okay.
Get real comfortable with being embarrassed. I was on a podcast the other day, had a great conversation about something similar but different. Like that embarrassment. Like, if you can get comfortable with embarrassment is what progress feels like. Like, no one has gotten further without trying something that's a risk. And for every one successful something that you see, that same exact person, that one successful thing you see from them, they had 1,000 embarrassing moments that got them there. Embarrassment is what progress feels like in your area of craft. That's ultra running, saying, "Hey, I think I can do this. I think I can do this in 24 hours," and then coming in at 36 hours. Like, that's embarrassing. It feels good, that, because I know the next time I'm going to be either more realistic with my goal of time, or I'm going to train better and maybe actually get closer to that 24 hour, but you don't know until you just put yourself out there.
Oh yeah. And you even called it out during the Zion, recap that we did, where it's like, man, I can't believe I was looking at the wrong thing on my watch. Like, this whole time I thought I was looking at something else, but I was looking at this. That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then in the edit process, when you were sitting right here, like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to get crucified for this. Like, just everyone's going to know that I just blew it. Yeah. But that's, you know what? You'll never do that again.
That's right.
It only takes once.
That's how you that's how you have like that quiver of amazing insight, is through your embarrassments and failure, not through. Let's imagine that every video you and I had done together comes out and gets 1 million views. We don't have as much to offer in insight in how to do this.
No,
You know?
totally, man. Totally.
So.
That's a good point.
Well, hey, the documentary is great, and in 2 weeks in to already be all, it's 5,000 views away from being more than our first documentary we did together, DFL before DNF with Jeremy, and that's been out for it's been out for 10 months. Feels like longer.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm proud of everything I've done with you, and everything that we've done together, and we've even joked like, what happens when we get to the like 15th version of something we do, or like the 20th version, like how much better are those going to be? And I hope they're substantially better, you know?
Yeah. And to put it in trail running terms, like Billy Yang, like by the time he blew up, he had been trying, I mean, he'd been making a bunch of probably hundreds of videos, maybe more.
Yeah.
Like by the time we see somebody who we think is an overnight success, they've been grinding for 10 years.
Yeah.
With no visibility, no success.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the flowers about the documentary, man. I'm super proud of it. No problem sharing it with my friends. Like, hey, you need to watch this. I don't care if you give a lick about trail running. It's just cool to watch for sure.
Yeah. I can't wait for the future of what we can pull together. If any sponsors are listening and you want to sponsor a documentary, call me.
Yeah. Reese's.
If Reese's
we're available.
Nestle.
Reese's Pieces.
And Nestle bought out Blue Bottle coffee. They buy out, cool stuff. Come on. Buy me a documentary.
Or Marlboro.
The first ever ultra running documentary sponsored by a cigarette company. That would be us. There we go. Okay. All right. Thanks, Ben. Let's do this again.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah.